Hi all. There was an amazing blitz game recently against Endless Fighter, and yes, there were so many missed opportunities in post-mortem. It actually made me rethink, why am I missing all these forcing moves? The subject of forcing moves has been brought up several times on the channel. It's a very, very important, fundamental part of chess tactics, the mastery of chess tactics. If you can calculate well your forcing sequences, and often involving a sacrifice, that's the basis of beautiful combinations, exploiting tactical vulnerabilities. And we've taken many perspectives to increase the motivation, trying to get the understanding and the flow of the forcing move concept in our own games. I've mentioned in the past the notion of the docking computer. I don't know how many of you remember that, or the idea of that it helps you find tactical vulnerabilities in positions. But there's another idea from this game against Endless Fighter recently, and the idea that forcing moves force cooperation. And I think that's kind of amusing, that idea, this spin on it, because you might be going into a game, you're terrified of the opponent, but you have in your mental toolkit this idea that you're actually getting cooperation from the opponent's pieces. Then even if you're going to play Garry Kasparov, maybe you don't need to be terrified. He's not going to probably let you have any forcing moves, but let's just keep this theoretical. You might be less terrified if you have the idea that you can sometimes force cooperation of the opponent's pieces. Maybe someone, maybe slightly higher than you, and you get a bit more confidence just from the concept that you can actually get your opponent to help you, the opponent's pieces, to cooperate with yours by using forcing moves like that to find the opportunities for cooperation. So here I was black. I got a good position out of the opening, and there was nothing too much to worry about here. And in fact, the opponent played a bit recklessly or aggressively, however you want to label it here, with this g4. I played in the centre with c5, and actually I've got good central pressure and pressure on b2. He gives up the dark square bishop, and so we have a scene set with me having the two bishops. In particular, this could be painful on the dark squares at the moment. Okay, bishop f7, it took here, and now I've got that c-file as well as a trump card to inflict pain with at some point. Queen d2, e5, pushing the knight. So a very, very comfortable position here with the bishop pair and this c-file, and he castles queenside, so the king is now a sitting target. So the scene is really being set for something interesting here. G5 is also, this diagonal is also seemingly quite interesting. Bishop e7, bishop h3, rook c7 responding to that threat. Okay, took. My bishops are still kind of pointing in the general direction of his king. E takes, opening up on b2, and it's just a very, very nice position. Knight e5, and here I give up the dark square bishop, because I think that this diagonal is really quite sensitive. And things get really interesting. I'm dropping d5, king h8, and I played rook d2, and all of a sudden I've got very, very strong dynamic tactical potential here, even though I've given up voluntarily the bishop here. Often when you give up, say, the dark square bishop, you often get a light square attack going, or it supports a light square attack. Here, I mean, I'm supporting coordination on c2, and this nasty pin now, but it also introduces a number of forcing moves. And here it is actually already a very, very difficult position. The rook can't move without dropping h3. My opponent played king b1. And yeah, our motivation for checking out forcing moves in a 5-minute game, of course it's absurd. A 5-minute game isn't much time for in-depth calculation. But I'm just wondering about the notion of cooperation. If you actually ask, how do forcing moves help cooperation? And here they just about seem to foul. That the forcing move queen h3 just seems to foul, because unfortunately there's rook d1 here. I think this is something I saw during the game, that unfortunately there's rook d1. But okay, let's have a look again in this position. Queen takes, rook takes, we don't have to routinely actually play rook f1 here. We can actually, there's a much more powerful move in this position that was revealed in post-mortem. So if you want your opponent's pieces to cooperate and not like defend d1, there's a way of knocking that out here. Can you spot it? I don't know how many of you have seen the relevant blitz video, but if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video here, can you see something very interesting in this position? If I give you 5 seconds starting from now, to force cooperation that you don't want the opponent to have d1 control. Okay, bishop takes c2, and here, in fact, if king a1, we could just play this check and be a bishop up. Yeah, so even though there's a bit of control of d1, we're a bishop up there, winning. And the other thing is, on king c1, now bishop d3 check, and the king's forced to an embarrassing spot, for example here, rook f1 checkmate. So it's a beautiful tactical idea. And that's actually, funny enough, it was just one of many in this very strange game. I don't know why there were so many opportunities tactically. Okay, I mean, it started with giving up the dark square bishop, relinquishing the bishop pair. But it was quite amazing in the course of the game. I mean, let's just make sure bishop takes c2. Here, there's no real choices. You can give up the queen. There's no real choices here. Rook c2, rook takes c2, and then whatever. Then there's checkmate. So there was that one, which was really beautiful. Queen takes h3. It would have been absolutely wonderful. But it got me wondering. When I was on my iPad looking at this game in the comments, I thought, isn't this a sort of source of bribery, that you're sort of bribing the rook to lose that one, but then you have to bribe the other rook to lose control of d1? And I thought, no, bribe is the wrong term, because you're not trying to persuade pieces, you're actually forcing their cooperation. When I started looking at that concept, forcing cooperation, yes, you can see that you're actually forcing the cooperation of the rook to leave the first rank, but it's not enough with d1 control, so you force cooperation to weaken d1, and it all is really just crushing after that. But then later on in the game, in the very same game, there's another magical moment here coming up, where it was looking really dangerous. In fact, queen f8 being threatened, so queen e7 defending that, and yeah, my opponent had a crushing position theoretically here. So we have this position coming up later in the game. And there's another thing though coming up, which I was happy that I had this position because of rook takes b4, and the opponent still is better. He should have played this apparently, and this is really, really good. And if takes, then it's check time, getting the queens off safely. But he didn't do that. He actually played queen d6, and this was the second magical moment in the same game, where there's another forced cooperation of the opponent's pieces. That can you see what black can do here? If I give you 5 seconds, if you just think of this idea, how do you use forcing moves? And I've mentioned in the past, you can expose tactical vulnerabilities in the opponent, but also it's like you're getting the opponent's pieces to cooperate. So, and to understand the mechanics of forcing moves and how you're getting the opponent's pieces to cooperate is interesting. I played rook takes b4. If I give you 5 seconds, what would you play? Okay, there's rook takes c2, because the queen is is having to be protected from that rook. It's overloaded, so if takes, we take the queen. And the funny thing is as well, that we can, even if king a3, we just take here and then we're winning that rook. So that was another interesting moment in the game. I know obviously computers are finding everything instantly in less than like 100th of a second, but it's still interesting, just I think conceptually, I'm just thinking, how can we increase our motivation for finding key forcing moves? Is this another route to bear in mind? Maybe from a psychological perspective, as I mentioned, if you're playing someone much stronger, you might be put off, scared, frightened, timid, But the idea that you can actually get your opponent's pieces to cooperate with yours, it's like an outrageous little joke. You know, why would the opponent's pieces cooperate? But you can often force them in chess. So here I didn't. And then we get another magical moment coming up. Again, it's unbelievable that I'm on the verge of losing, and I find this move, bishop e8, which actually threatens b4. And the opponent here could have won with several moves like bishop d7. In fact, what he played is okay as well, c3, but bishop d7 is really quite strong. So he's got a crushing position. And I played g takes h6, and he's still got a crushing position. He should really immobilize this rook with rook f8. This is a good move. Or bishop d7, just to stop that bishop eyeing a4. But he actually played rook d8, and another magic moment here in the game. And this is really amusing cooperation, even this slight slip up here. If you look at forcing moves to encourage cooperation of the opponent's pieces, I wonder if that would help you find a nice forcing sequence here. And I'm hoping some of you haven't seen or have forgotten that blitz game. If I give you 5 seconds in this position, what forcing moves encourage what cooperation, force what cooperation from the opponent, is an interesting question. Rather than what I might have said in the past, you know, docking computer concept or exposing tactical vulnerabilities, but it's just another way of just reinforcing the point, the motivation. So what could you find here if you're really searching out to get the opponent to cooperate with your pieces? If I give you 5 seconds here. Okay, it's b4, which kind of forcefully cooperates with a third rank weakness. You could look at it like that. And then there's rook g3, and it's state mating as the bishop's holding a4. So it's going to be mating next move. Rook d3 just delays it, or we could delay it twice. So, you know, basically it's mating. You know, for example, like that. So I just thought it was amusing, and someone said, you know, it was like painful to see all these missed opportunities, and it was. I thought it's interesting, you know, sometimes you do engine postmortems, and they come up with all of that instantly. And as humans, you know, we're not obviously going to see millions of positions like computers, but it's the forcing sequences which are especially critical if we are going to be analysing, you know, the important variations. And so that's why I'm thinking, if there's another angle to give you on the channel, you know, how do we search? How do we encourage ourselves to search for these key forcing moves which can help us win games? I thought it's worth mentioning it to you explicitly in this video, and I hope maybe you'll find this video interesting. And if you do start winning a few more games as a result of this idea for forcing moves, please let me know in the comments. Okay, the idea that you're kind of forcing the opponent's cooperation. So forcing moves, force cooperation. Let me know if that helps. Comments or questions on YouTube. Oh, by the way, the game, I just ended up winning on time, but yeah, far from ideal to win on time. It would have been nice to win with those lovely wins during the game. Thanks very much.